Hi, and welcome into the Cool Grandpa podcast. I'm excited to have you here this week. This week, our guest is Doug Schoen. And if that name sounds familiar to you, we've had Doug on before talking about his projects with helping people really invigorate the second half of their lives. And he's got a program that's called Success After 60. And it's a fascinating and a great program for people that are looking to do a little bit more instead of just retire. Now, one thing too that we're going to be talking about is his experience with a 3-generation household. Now, we're going to hear about how Doug and his wife, his oldest son, and their grandson are all living together and able to make that work. So, this is going to be a fun conversation that you are going to enjoy with a lot of real valuable insights from Doug. I do want to remind you that Grandparents Academy is hosting Grandparents Week. That kicks off on Grandparents Day, which is September 8th, and it runs through September 14th. Now, there's a link in the show notes for a free pass for you to enjoy all the different experts, all the different presentations that will be going on during this time. So be sure to sign up and get your free pass. Also, if you upgrade to the paid version, which allows you to get access to the recordings of the presentations, you also get entered into a great program to win a fantastic grandparent adventure. So check that out. But again, be sure to get your free pass at the very least so that you can join me and a lot of other people with Grandparents Academy's Grandparents Week. Now, without further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Doug. Hi, Doug. Welcome to the Cool Grandpa podcast. I'm excited to have you back on the show.
Well, great. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I feel honored to be asked back. I guess, the first one wasn't okay. If you want to do this a second time. I was just going to say, like I said, the first time I've been looking at the different podcasts that you have. I'm familiar with what you do, and you seem to pick really interesting folks to interview. I feel honored to be included in that group, so thank you very much for inviting me back.
Oh, you're more than welcome. We had such a great conversation talking about success after 60, and I wanted to have you back on because one of the things I think we were talking about on that show, or maybe in our call in between, was the fact that you are living in a 3-generation household. And so that's not, incredibly unheard of, but it is a little bit different from the norm.
It is, and it was not the way I was raised. And in fact, I was an only child, and for much of my childhood, raised by a single parent, my mom. So absolutely the opposite of what I was accustomed to. And unfortunately, with kids and grandkids, they come along one at a time and say, yeah, some time to get adapted to it.
Oh yeah, it's like cooking a crab or something, right? It's like you get in the pot, and then slowly that temperature, starts to raise as you start to add more folks into the mix.
Yeah, similarly, it all happened once, I'm not going to run it. So
Yeah, exactly. I'd love for you, Doug, to take a moment and just kind of introduce you and the family that's living with you, and give us a little bit of background on everyone.
absolutely. Well, I've been married for 44 years to my wonderful wife, Sharon. We had 5 children. I actually have 6, but I was married before. But Sherry and I have 5, raised them. Also had a foster child, was with us for a while. Child, he was, teens and older. So we had a lot of experience of raising children, at least to a certain extent. We always had other people staying with us as well. So it was always a busy household. And then, our youngest now is 27 years old. So, ultimately they all kind of moved out. Sherry and I actually sold the big house. It was something like 8 or 10 years ago, and tried moving into a retirement community. I say tried, because I think somebody who I remember a comedian saying this once. Yeah, I moved, but I made the mistake of giving my kids the forwarding address. So, So we were actually in this retirement community for 3 years, and of those 3 years, Sherry and I, we probably had about 3 months, with just the two of us there, because various of our kids moved in and stayed for a while and moved back out. I will tell you that those few months were great, because Sherry and I are great friends, as well as being married all these years. But we kept saying, "Gosh, it's quiet." So we didn't feel like we missed out by not having all that time to ourselves. It's kind of an interesting experience. But then about it's been 5 years now. Our oldest son, who was married and had a child, was in the military. He got discharged on a disability from the Army and also got divorced. Had them at the same time. So they were on the East Coast. And so we moved him and his son, our grandson Ben. So this is Brian, our son, and our grandson Ben moved then in with us. The first thing we had to leave the retirement. Get a bigger house again. Let's go downscale, let's go. And so that's the way it's been for 5 years now, and just turned 8. And so that's kind of that multi-generational family we got. That's my wife and I, and then our son Brian, and then our grandson Ben. And our daughter Shannon was also staying with us temporarily. So we're back to the bigger household, which frankly we feel more comfortable with.
Oh, sure. Well, and I think too, one of the big adjustments that a lot of people have, my wife and I included, is as the kids are moving out, even when they're starting to come back here and there or whatnot, that that silence, that lack of being busy, also kind of feels a little strange, because it's like it's Saturday. We should be going to some school function or some sporting goods function or something,
Yeah.
and we don't have anything on the schedule. What do we do on a day with nothing planned?
And if it had us hate with the school schedule too, it's like, wait a minute, school out? Why are there so many kids walking around, in the neighborhood? Because you're so caught up with that and so in sync with it when you have kids going. So like exactly the last day of school, and summer vacation starts when they're not there. It's like, oh yeah, there's other people on a completely different schedule.
Oh, absolutely. And I was joking with my son this summer because his oldest son is going to be heading towards first grade, and the last year or so, I've been like, hey, these vacations that and trips you take off in the middle of October or the first part of March or whatever, you're not going to be able to do that so much anymore. You're going to have to be starting to time all your trips and everything to the school schedule. I said, get ready for that for the next about 20 years with their daughter and then maybe some other kids down the road. It's like, yeah, you don't know how entangled you become with your own plans when you have those kids in school.
Yeah, and having families, you've been able to give a lot of feedback to your kids as they become parents, as they and warn them, the things are going to change. We have it's recently, fairly recently, went through that with our middle son, who he and his wife just had a child, so we have a new granddaughter. Since the last time we talked, Olivia.
Congratulations.
She's now, thank you, 5 months old, I think. And so we were talking about, you're not going to get any sleep for a while. And he's, well, he said, yep. And he's never heard him so invigorated as when he reported a little while back that she has started sleeping through the night.
Oh, that becomes big for parents, especially when you have little colicky kids or they just have something going on where they might sleep for 3 or 4 hours at a stretch, but then they're back up and fussing. And yeah, that's definitely also one of those things when we go and visit my kids with the brand new kids and they're a few months old. It's like, we'll get up at 2 o'clock. You just leave us a bottle. We'll take care of it. And they feel like they're putting out on us and things. It's like, hey, I can go home and catch up on sleep anytime I want. You're in this for the next few months. So, take a night off and enjoy it.
Yeah, and it actually is an interesting point in talking about, sharing with your kids your experience as a parent, as they were experiencing those new things. now that we have an 8-year-old now, he was 3, and now after 5 years, she becomes 8. It's amazing how that happens. Um, we've had to experience a lot of that whole child rearing thing, and what kids do, and the surprises they give you and how you deal with them. All that's just been, on the one hand, we've got this experience to deal with, and we've got these new experiences to kind of remind ourselves, oh yeah, that's the kind of thing that can happen, and how do you deal with it? So that's been part of the multi-generational family experience. Suddenly having a 3-year-old very active, boy around the house is kind of catches you off guard after you've having experienced it for a couple of decades.
Oh, sure. Well, and 3 is, in my opinion, is worse than 2, because 3, they can motor themselves around, meaning they can walk around, they can run really quick, they can do different things, and they still have that separation kind of programming. Like you might say, "Hey, let's go get chocolate ice cream," and they may throw a fit just because they want strawberry, and for no reason. But they're 3 and they can exercise that, and so that's why I always kind of warn them. I'm like, don't worry, 2, they're still kind of cute and cuddly and things. 3 is when kind of the claws come out with those little ones.
They can, although they can all be different too. So,
Oh yeah.
also sort of relates back to to what extent is our experience having raised 5 children helpful and applicable to this new person.
Sure.
Because one thing we learned from having 5 is that they're all different from you. It's like you have your first one, this is such a struggle. You have your second one, you go, oh, okay, I know I have to hang this now, learned all this, and now they're completely different. And the third comes along, oh, now it's completely different again. So.
And even how you react to it. There's that that joke about the mom with the pacifier. With baby number 1, it's got to be sanitized and go through this whole big process. 2, it's like just rinse it off under the sink. 3, it's just kind of blow it off and pick off any hairs and then give it right back to the kid. It's kind of an interesting way that you kind of also learn how adaptable kids are.
Well, yeah, my wife Sherry used to so love to tell that story. Since we have 5, she would go more with that. And with the 4th one, she could have her own best.
And Doug, I wanted to talk to you a little bit too, because you've got that 5 years of now having this. Is what kind of an adjustment was it having a 3-year-old that wasn't just visiting, but all of a sudden you guys have a 3-year-old in the house?
It was a lot more active household suddenly. Obviously, there's a lot more activity going on. And then also, I'm a fairly tidy person, but and now you've got, beginning of 3 and getting older boy with all the toys. And oddly enough, they're just not as good as adults at putting their stuff away at the end of the day. And so it was a lot messier, and I was having to deal with that. It was a significant challenge. The noise level, definitely went up. And, the disciplinary interactions were all suddenly part of the landscape again, which is, obviously something that to talk about in terms of who's doing the disciplining, the grandparents or the parent. So it's a pretty significant change. Yeah. I mean, we're still, well, obviously this kids change. It's still changing, but yeah, it was a big jump from, the two of us with, from most of the time an adult child to suddenly having, a 3-year-old and up in the house. It was took a bit of adjustments. But, old habits come back.
Yep. And how was that working with your son about the discipline with the kids? The fun stuff is always kind of takes care of itself, but when you get a 3-year-old that stomps their foot and tells you no about something, people handle that differently. Different generations do different things. How did you guys navigate that?
That was one of the interesting challenges, and that's one of the things before we got together this evening. I actually talked with Brian a bit. I said, "Hey, I'm going to be doing this podcast. We're going to be talking about how things have been here, and and what's your point of view? How does it look to you? Because I'm sure it looks different to him than it does for me. And as far as the disciplinary part is concerned, what he said was he appreciated the fact that Sherry and I have a fairly hands-off approach to disciplining Ben. We do two things. Number one, we will take over if you just stick on too much and Ben's getting, a little too good at pushing buttons and Brian's getting frustrated, which is what, Sherry and I super judge as parents. So we're kind of used to that role and we take over. And sometimes we just take them for the evening and say, hey, you're going to have a sleepover with grandpa and grandma. And we're going to watch, a Disney movie on our TV and you're going to sleep in with us. And sometimes we even said, Brian, go take the weekend. Just go away for the weekend. Or get a hotel. We'll take over. But as far as the discipline part is concerned, we've worked really hard on keeping in mind that Brian is the dad and that we are the grandparents. And it's been this, Ron says it's complicated trying to navigate that difference, the difference in those roles, not overstepping and understanding that Brian has to be the primary disciplinarian. And it's sometimes hard for us because he does things differently than we do. And you always want to go, I have a half century worth of experience. Let me show you how to do this. Let me just take over. But we've been good, I think, about, not doing that. And he kind of acknowledged that. But what he said was, look, if I'm more than happy to hear your advice, as long as you understand I may or may not take it. And I think that's been sort of the saving grace in terms of how this guy's been able to work. Because we're all very strong-willed individuals. We have a very strong independence, opinionated streak in our family, which probably really expect me. And to be able to have him say that we've been able to be successful at not trying to impose our opinions and our personal discipline on him, but share it with him and he can, take it or not take it. That felt very good. And it was good that we were, having this conversation now because it gave me the opportunity to talk to him about that. It's just been, 5 years and bigger conversations, but it's good to get an overall view from his perspective. How does this look to you and how has it been working? And is there anything you want to say? It's also important.
Oh, sure. Well, and the other thing that I love about that too, when you were talking about, hey, here's the advice or here's what I'm seeing, take it or leave it. I used to do that with my kids and had the approach of, you guys can ask me for anything. If you want to go on a ski trip to Vermont, ask away, but the answer might be no. But the answer might also be yes. Yeah. So I think having that kind of approach, it took the pressure off. It allowed the kids the freedom to ask. And then in your case, it gives you the freedom to, hey, here's what it is. And it gives Brian the opportunity to go, hey, that's a really good idea. I'm going to implement what Dad said. Or it's like, no, I think I'm going to do it this way. But at least it's there.
Yeah. And I think what I'm hearing both of us saying is it's about communication.
Yes.
It's about the willingness to talk to somebody and the willingness to listen to somebody. And both of you, both of you have to have both of those things, and do it with an understanding that we're all trying to do the best we can for everybody here. We all have everybody's best interests in heart. And I think if you go at it with that basic point of view and have open communication, just talk. If there's something going on, just say, look, can we just talk about this? I think that makes a huge difference. I think that's what kind of the secret to our success in all this.
Well, and I think too, from what you're describing, I think comes in is not being overly emotionally attached to the opinion, or it's like if Brian goes and does something different, it could work out. It could be really great. It could be, or it's going to be a learning experience for Brian. And I've had my 2 cents and I'm walking away and everything's fine. The relationship's great. But I think some of the problems come in, even when people don't necessarily live together, is people feeling so emotionally tied to an opinion or some kind of an outcome that causes a lot of friction.
Yeah, it's not about you. when you're trying to give advice to somebody about their child. It's about them. It's about your son, about your grandson, and how that works out. So whether they take your advice, try something like you're losing or winning something. And I think having that sort of, what you say, lack of attachment to whether or not the advice works. And I always try to keep in mind, look, I have never raised Ben before. I have raised all these other children, but I learned that all these children are different. And just because that doesn't work with Brian, for example, it may not work with Ben. And Brian, his idea can very well be just as valid because, he's also, raising this child for the first time.
Oh, absolutely. I got a question for you with you having uh, Ben living with you. Are you able to set aside some activities that are just special Ben and Grandpa time, or is it just all blended in together?
Oh, there's definitely some Ben and grandpa time, and he chooses it. It's not like I decide, oh, this is something we should do. It's like he will come to me and say, hey, I'm building this Hot Wheels track. Come out here in the backyard with me. He said, I went out now. It's just like 30 feet long. It's got kitchen chairs out there. It's all over the backyard, which, is great. And that's part of that change you were talking about. It's like I go out in my backyard now, and it is so apparent there is an 80-year-old boy living with us. But yeah, and like I said, he picks it, and my job then is to make myself available and to just listen to what he wants to do. Because he has very definite ideas, but very strong-willed child, and then play the game that he wants to play. So that's how that works, and I feel very fortunate that he wants to do that. That he will come to me and say, "Hey, Grandpa, spend some time with
Oh, that's awesome because I think sometimes, at least from my perspective, and I'm a long distance grandfather, is that when you have grandfathers, grandmothers, and the families are living so close together, sometimes not having that special grandpa's in town and this is we go for milkshakes or something like that can sometimes get lost, and it doesn't mean the relationships are any better or worse. It's just one of those, from a long distance perspective, that idea of like, grandpa's in town, we're going for chocolate milkshakes at some point.
Absolutely. Well, there's a definite difference involved in having a grandchild in the home and having a grandchild not in the home. Because we have a 5-year-old granddaughter who lives in the same town that we do. We're next one over. And we don't see her nearly as often. And so the relationship is very different. And so it's exciting for her when she gets to come over and yeah, at the birthday party or come to Christmas or whatever. So there's that special occasion kind of thing you were just talking about. And by the way, we just went to her kindergarten graduation. So that's good.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Yeah, it is the season for all of those little those big graduations and little graduations.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Have you had any of your other friends or associates also living within a multi-generational home?
Interestingly enough, I have not. I was giving some thought to that, but we really kind of in a different situation from most of the people that we know. So we don't like have, our friends to say, hey, how are you making this work? Because they're not doing the same thing. And I'm not really sure why. I mean, part of it's we have such, an unusual number of kids. Most of our friends, many of our friends don't have any kids, and certainly not had 5 kids. So there's a more target-rich environment, if you will, more likely to something like that happening. But now it's interesting that it hasn't been something that our friends have been doing.
Well, and I asked that because I'm not sure, but it seems like multi-generational homes are starting to become a little bit more frequent. I think we always run into the case of, and certainly I did it. You graduate from college, you move back home while you're finding your first job, or maybe you're in some kind of an unsettled situation, but then you're back out, and it might not be a true multi generational home. But I'm seeing more of that starting to occur in terms. So I was just curious if you'd run into that.
I'm saying that as a general proposition as well, particularly here. And a large part of it, like in the San Diego area where we live, housing is so incredibly expensive that, people in that point that you're just talking about haven't gotten out of college, getting the first job or even getting the first job for a while, cannot afford to buy a house, and so they're living with their parents because of that. So there's a lot of that going for sure.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, I think, as we get another 20, 30 years down the road, just seeing what the numbers were with that multi-generational house and how the little kids that are experiencing that, what their takeaways are. In many cultures, multi-generational homes are not a big deal. It's very frequent. Um, but I think in the United States, for probably almost 70 odd years, with the way that the country moved towards the suburbs, and going towards affordable housing for the most part. You argue on where you want to live, but it's interesting watching this change happen where people right out of school, young couples, can't really afford to buy in a good area, can't really afford to get into their own homes, and what that's going to do for the family dynamic.
Here's another social change that I'm kind of looking at that you probably are aware of that comes at the opposite end. So we have elderly parents now who are retired and perhaps having mobility issues, health issues, things like that, who are now having to move in with their adult children to care for them. This whole caregiver thing has become a big item in American society. So all the issues with cost of healthcare, cost of home care, and things like that. A lot of people like our age or younger are being pressed to that caregiver role, and all the impact that has on the family setting and the economics and social structure and all that. It's going to be very interesting to see how all of that plays out over the next 10, 15, 20 years soon.
Oh yeah, we're going to keep social scientists in business for a little while, so no shortage of studies and fact finding and things there, and it'll be interesting to see how all that shakes out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, one thing that I'd love to ask you about, and this probably ties in a little bit with the success after 60, is as you're seeing people in their 60s that might be starting another business, maybe starting another phase of life, how do you think that impacts with having a multi-generational household?
There is a whole host of responsibilities that comes from being, if you use the phrase head of household or, like a true generation family, and the responsibilities that comes far and just in terms of like the relationships, and we were just talking about, this issue of this is fun and how you work those things out. But the financial aspects of it as well. I mean, your household has higher costs and, and the guy at the top is one who's responsible for all of that, to a certain extent or other. I mean, like with Brian, he's, disabled vet. So, not able to contribute financially so much to the household, but he's a household manager, does all the cooking, shopping, and cleaning, all that kind of thing. Um, to a certain extent, I think it's going to have a little bit of, I say, negative aspect, but you're not going to have as much time and as much finances to put into that second upcoming career because of these other responsibilities that you have. So I think that is going to have something of a pushback. I don't want to say negative, but pushback impact on it.
Right. Well, no, and that's something that's good to put into the factoring of if you're looking to get into a franchise, if you're looking to pivot and become an independent consultant or whatnot, is having that data, having that idea in your mind that, hey, you're still going to have these other obligations that maybe you wouldn't have as just you and your spouse. Just put that into all the equation that goes into what you do, what your timelines are, what your expectations are, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. But on the other hand, having your adult child at home, that's another resource. That's something that, can contribute, assist with various things. Like there are many times when, I have Ryan do things for me in the law practice, go pick things up, deliver things, those kinds of things. So if you keep your mind open for the positive aspects of it as well, then that can be very helpful. And if you're starting a new business, there are a lot of startup tasks that are involved in that. So now you have another adult in the household who can sort of contribute to that and contribute their ideas and their point of view to it. Because if you're working on moving into a different business than you have been before, you have to understand that the people that you're going to be marketing to, your potential customers, that sort of thing, aren't going to be just you and your generation. It's also going to be, the generation younger. And so now here you've got a resource so that you give you some feedback on how this looks like from a 40-year-old perspective as opposed to a 70-year-old perspective or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's great. That's great feedback. I would love to have you share a little bit about the conversation or the feedback that Brian gave you about this upcoming interview that we're having. If you have any, notes or anything from him when you were talking about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one thing that he said several times was, it's complicated. That's, we talked a bit about it, him sharing his views about how the discipline everything worked, but we also talked about his relationship with us and the tasks that he has here, his sort of his role in the household and his being able to um, sort of navigate this new relationship that he has as being again a member of the household and having different responsibilities he had. And it came back to communication as well. That he said that you can talk about things that happen as a result of this new relationship that we have, especially given the responsibilities he has in the household, shopping, the cooking, and all those sorts of things. We talk about that because what I found really works best, again, very strong willed person, very opinionated kind of person, sort of like me. You can here's one prime example. We cannot cook together. You get the two of us in the kitchen trying to cook a meal together, and it does not end well. Each of us has some very clear-cut ideas on how things need to be done, and we're not really good at listening to other people's point of view when it comes to something like that. So that's been an aspect of the relationship. It's like, okay, if I'm going to ask you to do this, I'm not going to tell you how to do it. That's how that's kind of had to be navigated. And I think part of it is recognizing the fact this is a 40-year-old man. This is not, the young boy or the young man, the teenager or whatever that we had in our household for all those years. He's gone out, he's been married, he's been in the military, he's done a lot of different things, and he's now come back with this whole wealth of experience. And I need to honor the fact that he has his own experience and gets to have his own opinions and back off to a certain extent. So that's trying to establish those roles, the father and son, as well as the father, son, grandson role. It takes some work. It takes thought, and again, goes back to communication.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. I think so many times when I go and visit my sons and their families, or they come here, that occasionally I find myself slipping back into the mode of them being 17 years old. Not very much, because they've got two little grandkids each that quickly remind me that, hey, they're dads. Um, but occasionally that can be kind of a tough shift, because I also do it with my siblings. When my siblings get together, all of a sudden we revert back to when we were teenagers, and it takes a little while to snap us up and have us all grow up on the spot, so to speak. But
And another example of that has been with Sherry. Her parents live near us, and they've got her dad has a lot of medical issues, cognitive issues, things like that. So, but Sherry now gets to experience being with her parents, but being an adult with her own children and grandchildren, and how that relationship plays out in terms of finding it across to her mother. She's not a kid anymore. She gets to have her own opinions. And so that's been, a little bit of her challenge. My parents have been gone for a long time, so have that opportunity. That's another way of looking at it. But it's a challenge, and the whole thing, redefining those roles as you move through life and you become an adult and become an independent person. It's a challenge from all those different perspectives.
Oh yeah, and like you said, and it's the communication, it's being upfront, because I think it may have happened or may not have happened that you sometimes don't say things because you don't want to get into a heavy conversation, and then it just keeps building and building, and then sometimes you have to have a little bit of a thunderstorm come through to clear out the air. Uh, but if you're comfortable enough with that communication, then you can communicate about boundaries and values and different things.
Well, and that's been one of the benefits of having this multi-generational household is you can't just let things build up, and it would be a disaster if you did that. So it sort of makes it necessary for us to just stop and have those conversations, especially over a 5-year period of time. It would not have worked to not have those conversations. But interestingly, our middle son, who is now he's across the country. He's in the Air Force. He's 20 years actually, and he's the one that just had the granddaughter 6 months ago. Since we haven't had that living together relationship, those conversations have not been continuous. And so there's been a couple of times where, like, Sherry and he have had to have a couple of conversations about how things are going to work going forward in terms of grandparenting. I mean, he just flat out said, I don't want any of your advice. Oh, period. He has. So that was an interesting conversation, and it was hard for Sherry to deal with that. But that's because of a different relationship.
Sure.
Because they are completely independent across the country, do this all on their own. I in the household with us. So it was a great contrast between how things are going, here with Brian and Ben, and then there with Eric and Olivia. So yeah, all kinds of learning experiences there.
Oh, I bet. Is there any advice that you would have for a new family that's starting to come together in a multi-generational setting?
I think the first most important piece of advice is the communication piece, and have some really early on conversations before this even happens to say, look, this is going to be complicated. We've got new roles we need to figure out, and each of us has to be able to operate within our own sphere of responsibility and authority and that sort of thing. But we need to be able to talk, because it's not going to come naturally. We need to sit down, talk about what's bothering us, figure out how to make it work, and then come up with some sort of joint decisions about that. And I think it's the most important part. Is the communication piece is just acknowledging the fact that this is going to be complicated. This is not anything we ever get educated on growing up as adults. For the most part, like you pointed out, in sort of American society, it has not been the way that it has been. For us, I didn't grow up with, my grandparent household. And so they need to acknowledge that this needs to be discussed, figured out. Like you're saying, the business world, go through various iterations and go back and do a new version of it, and be willing to say, hey, that didn't work. Let's try something different.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, I think as part of that, as you said, it's calling out up front that this is going to be a little sticky, that, until we get into a groove, it'll be a little bit bumpy, but as long as we all make the commitment to respect each other and to communicate as best we can, should work out.
And isn't that really what we learned through marriage as well? I mean, didn't we have to kind of go through that same process for those of us who've been married for a long time? You sort of realize it's not the Hollywood dream. You get married and everything is happening to us smoothly, and everybody gets surprised when all of a sudden there's problems, because they don't teach us that ahead of time. And so we had to learn that it is going to get sticky. And we just had those conversations. We went through several, Sherry and I went through several sessions of couples counseling to get some professional advice on how to navigate all this stuff. And so as experienced spouses, we've got that sort of general concept. Now we need to take that concept and put it into play in this new set of relationships.
Yep. Yep. What has been some of the most rewarding aspects of having a multi-generational home?
I thought about that today. Ben is in going through summer camp now. He's going to the School of Rock, so he's learning how to play piano and stuff. So he's gone at 8 to 3. Came home, came running in, and he gave me this big hug. That's really the best reward you can have.
That's awesome. Yeah, having that immediacy, I bet, is a huge payoff in
Yeah.
being there.
And seeing him grow. I mean, he's we've got a piano in the house. We got primarily for him, and he goes and learns the stuff. He comes home and plays it, and we get to listen to him playing. It's watching this little person unfold. That we had the opportunity to do for a while. I mean, everybody changes obviously, but 40-year-olds not going to change as rapidly, as radically as an 8-year-old is as you watch them go through life. So yeah, that's been extremely rewarding.
Doug, I've had you on for a little bit. Is there anything else about living in a multi-generational home that I haven't asked you or we haven't hit on that you would love to share?
I think that the one thing I would love to share is that it is something that can be successfully navigated and can be very, very rewarding. And you need to look at it as something that is a choice, even though you have various circumstances in various families where it seems like, well, this kind of had to be done for various reasons, but you can always make a different choice. So if you realize this is something that everybody involved in has chosen to do, and celebrate the fact that this was something that you're capable of doing, and then go through those, the suggestions that I made for how to put it together. I think it's something that should be promoted, really. There's so much to be gained from a multi-generational family that we lost, as you pointed out, for all those decades where just not the way things were done in America. And I think that there is a good reason that in so many cultures, this is the norm. And that you can see sort of the wisdom being shared amongst the generations that you don't have the opportunity to do if you don't live together. So don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. But work at it. Understand it's going to be complicated. It's like you say, it's going to be sticky. But put the effort in and have a goodwill about it. Understanding that each of you is trying to do the best you can for the family and for each other under the circumstances.
I love that. That's a great way to leave this conversation. Doug, I will be putting a link to our previous episode where we talked about success after 60 into the show notes and everything, and people can find that. If people want to get in touch with you or learn more about success after 60, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably the Facebook page. Success After 60 is on Facebook. I try to have a lot of content on there. I post something, like a video every week and some other things every week. Got some other people that are putting things up. I think that's probably the easiest way for people to access it if they're on Facebook. We have a web page too, and so they're welcome to go to that. But the Facebook is, more frequently refreshed and has the more interesting conversations and the newer conversation. And I'm going to post some links to this podcast on my Facebook page as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll be sure to put a link into the show notes because we know people are out driving, running errands, doing different things. So we'll make it super easy for folks to get back in touch with you.
I really appreciate that, Greg. You are doing such a great service here and sharing with people all these concepts about grandparenthood. It's just, like I keep saying, this is not something we get trained on in schools or whatever. And the fact that you're taking on the task of sharing these concepts with people is just a tremendous service. So thank you for doing that.
Well, I appreciate it. And thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Really did appreciate this conversation with Doug. It was great to get his insights on how multi-generational families can work. Now, of course, everybody's situation is going to be different, but I really appreciated Doug's advice on how to keep those lines of communication wide open. I think that's important, not only just in general with our relationships, but also especially when you do have multiple generations in one roof. It was also great to hear about the need to be able to separate himself from being the parent and allowing his son to be the father and to be the one that really kind of set the boundaries, set the rules, but then also having Doug and his wife be able to help also enforce those rules too. Now, I'm sure that as grandparents, we want to always be having a lot of fun and being able to kind of spoil the kids in a good way, but that's not always a great way for little kids to grow up. So I'm sure there's a balance there. And I think Doug and I, we really kind of hit on that you've got to have that balance between having fun and playing, making sure that the parent is stepping up and being the parent, and then also enforcing the rules and the boundaries of the household. So the little one really grows up not being able to play people off against each other, because, that's what little kids will do. They'll figure out if they hear a no, they're going to figure out pretty quick where they can get a yes. And it's important that everybody be on the same page. So I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. Please like and subscribe to this. If you're hearing it on a podcast, be sure at your podcast player that you're subscribed to the Cool Grandpa podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do me a favor and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That'll help us grow this message of how important grandfathers are and what a fun and exciting way we can have an impact on the families and especially those grandkids. So until next time, remember to stay cool.